Journalists, social justice, and corruption fighters put their lives at risk to expose the abuse of power in government and crime organizations. They might cover the human suffering in civil war or use their art to expose corruption. These art portraits honor the lives of women around the world who have been murdered for their work. It is not a complete exhibit of these heroes who have paid the ultimate cost, but it is worth taking time to remember their sacrifice. Diane Foss was an American primatologist who studied the mountain gorillas in Rwanda from 1966 until her murder in 1985. She exposed the illegal poaching and strongly supported conservation efforts for the mountain environment for the gorillas. She was murdered in her remote cabin close to where she spent time with the gorillas, likely by the poachers. Melinda Maxino is a Filipino journalist. She worked in Batangas City, and during her career with the Philippine Daily Inquirer, she exposed corruption within the city government, especially of the late Governor Armando Sanchez. In August 2005, she resigned from that paper and went into hiding due to threats on her life. She was murdered outside the apartment where she lived. Daphne Caruana Galizia was a Maltese journalist, writer, and anti-corruption activist. She continued to publish articles for decades on political events in Malta, exposing nepotism, patronage, and allegations of money laundering. She investigated links between the online gambling industry and organized crime. She was a regular columnist with the Sunday Commentary and had her own blog. She was murdered by a car bomb. In 2018, a consortium of 45 international journalists published the Daphne Project, a collaboration to complete her investigative work. Nadia Vera was a Mexican social activist and passionate defender of human rights through the arts. She wrote poems, staged dance workshops and theater productions, and participated in street protests to demand political and social justice. She was murdered with 3 other women alongside her friend, Ruben Espinosa. Both had fled the state of Veracruz due to threats on their life because of their work. In Mexico, more than 23,000 people have disappeared since 2006, and families are left on their own to investigate. Marie Catherine Colvin is an American-British journalist who worked as a foreign affairs correspondent. She lost the sight of her left eye while reporting on the Sri Lankan Civil War. There is a movie based on her entitled My Private War. She exposed the human suffering and the brutality of war, and she took great risks to expose this and eventually was killed in the Syrian Civil War. Katarina Hansuk was the Ukrainian corruption fighter who was awarded the Woman of Courage Award for her journalism and was a persistent investigator of corruption in Ukraine. She exposed problems within the police and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And for this, it is suspected she was the victim of a Russian acid attack that eventually took her life. Marie Ivanovich, the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, attended her award ceremony on the eve of her abrupt dismissal from the Trump administration. Saga Salad Osman is a Somalian producer and journalist. She was the second female journalist killed within 6 months in Somalia. It is thought that Al-Shabaab, a militant group connected with Al-Qaeda, is responsible for the murder. She worked at a state-run radio station and was a well-known local news reporter. She was also a student at Plasma University studying computer science, and she was the caretaker for her 6 siblings following the death of her mother. Shirazi Ibrahim was an Iraqi Kurdish reporter and a news anchor. She was known professionally as Shifra Gardi. She was on a mission to investigate a mass grave where it was alleged that ISIS militants had killed and buried hundreds of civilians in Mosul. While trying to film, a bomb exploded and she and members of her crew were killed or injured. She was born a refugee in Iran in 1986, and she had graduated with a journalism degree and joined the Ruda Media Network. Veronica Grinn was an Irish crime reporter. She had a background in accounting, and she became a newspaper reporter in 1994, and she began writing about crime. She investigated and traced the profits from the heroin trade. Her reporting led to numerous threats on her life, assaults, and a confrontation at her door by a gunman who shot her in the leg. She recovered and remained undaunted. Veronica was killed by 2 motorcycle gunmen while stopped at a stoplight. But because of her work and legacy, Ireland can seize property and assets of ill-gotten gains.